Compton, it's a known land. If you wanna play games, go to Disneyland.
Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we tapping into the streets of Compton. We taking a deep look into the dangerous Compton Tortilla Flats versus the Pirus and many other rival gangs. Compton Tortilla Flats, or T-Flat, are a Serrano Mexican-American gang dating back to the early 1960s. Based on Compton's east side, their hood spans roughly from Rosecrans Avenue down to Compton Boulevard between Willbrook Avenue and Alameda Street. T-Flats, or CVTF, falls under the Serrano umbrella with the Mexican mafia. The Flats have a very long list of enemies in Compton. Notable black gangs like the Fruittown Pirus, the Treetop Pirus, and the Elm Street Pirus. But they also beef with Mexican gangs like Compton 70s, or CV70, Largo 36, or Loco 13. By the mid-90s, the signs of beef was evident. Compton was a war zone. The Flats wanted to smoke with anyone and everybody. In March of 1992, a Compton 70s member named Rafael Padilla, along with his brother Juan and other 70s members, were at a liquor store on Willbrook and Alejandro. While outside drinking, a T-Flats member named Leopoldo approached in a blue Escort, asking 70s member Juan for the time. As Juan approached the vehicle, Leopoldo suddenly opened fire, killing Juan, shooting him directly in the chest. Not long after this incident, Leopoldo was arrested and charged with Juan's death. And as many of you know, in the 90s, the tensions with a lot of black gangs were on the rise due to a lot of new rules implemented by La M.A. wanting more turf in the drug trade. But in 1995, Fruittown and the Flats and other sets tried to negotiate a truce at Gonzalez Park. But instead, the meeting erupted in violence. Not long after, a 21-year-old Latino male named Jose Gonzalez was shot and later died at the hospital. And within hours, retaliation shootings happened all across Compton. 10 minutes after Gonzalez died, a juvenile named Eduardo Jimenez, only 18 years old, was shot while waiting in traffic at Long Beach Boulevard and Rosecrans Avenue. At 11:30 p.m., the police were also called to a shooting on the 400 block of North Rose Avenue. 30-year-old Marcos Rivera died and 2 others were seriously injured. Authorities strongly believe all 3 of these attacks were connected to the failed truce attempt between the Flats and the Fruittown Pirus. As we all know, anytime there's a war, there are always casualties of war. And a lot of times, it's civilians who end up being killed. On October 6 of 1997, 9-year-old Selwyn LaFleur was waiting with his mother and 2 brothers at the Martin Luther King Jr. Transit on Willbrook Avenue when shots rang out. 2 Piru members, Victor and Tyrone, spotted a car carrying suspected T-Flat members, and they opened fire in broad daylight, shooting at the car. Unfortunately, a stray bullet struck young LaFleur in the chest, killing him as he stood at the busy transit station. Both men will eventually be arrested and convicted of murder.
Luis Lozano believes what's going on. He says his father was executed 3 months ago by Fruittown Piru Bloods.
And shot him cold blood, you know, they blew his head off, man. You know, that's not right, man.
51-year-old Lomito Lozano was just an honest, hard-working Mexican immigrant with 5 children. His wife says Lomito cherished his family. He'd come to pick up this stalled camper just a few blocks from the family home when the Pirus just shot him down.
You never know. When you see a black young guy, Mexican, you don't know if he's pissed at you or... You don't know nothing, you know? As I say, innocent people always die.
And the day after Lomito Lozano was murdered, there was retaliation. Another innocent victim ended up dead. This time, a car was shot up in a Fruittown Blood neighborhood. A Mexican died, so a black had to die.
The reality is that this particular vehicle was targeted. It was shot numerous times by assault weapons.
21-year-old Lakeisha Darden, who was in town for a few days visiting friends, made the mistake of accepting a ride from some youths associated with Fruittown Pirus. Battered with bullets, she died in the back seat. Police have arrested these 2 Tortilla Flats gangsters for the murder.
The following year, on November 23, 1998, a Fruittown member known as Lewis, a.k.a. Monster Rue, and another Fruittown member known as G. Wayne were allegedly shot at by a T-Flat member named Manuel Gonzalez, a.k.a. Pelon. Of course, when the police came to question him at the hospital, they refused to cooperate. Only a month later after this, all hell would break loose. On December 20 of 1998, respected T-Flats member Philip Ovali, had just made a purchase at a P&G market located on 640 West Peach Street, North Paulson Avenue. As he was getting on his bike, a Fruittown member known as G. Wayne and two others approached Philip. After words were exchanged, Philip shot him point-blank range in the face, and G. Wayne would immediately flee the scene. Philip would die right there on the spot. But this death would definitely have consequences, and it would set the city of Compton on fire. In early March of 1999, a T-Flats gang member known as Jorge Santos Diaz drove into the Fruittown Pirus hood and murdered a 21-year-old LeVar Higgins. Prosecutors would later prove that this attack was racially motivated and essentially a hate crime. In May of 1999, Diaz was convicted of a first-degree murder with the hate crime enhancement charge for Higgins' killing. Later in 1999, a party in Compton that was attended by T-Flat members, including Imelda De La Cruz and other T-Flat members. There was a confrontation with De La Cruz and a Compton Vadio 70 gang member. Guns eventually were drawn, and De La Cruz was shot over 12 times during the shootout.
19-year-old Imelda De La Cruz, drunk at a Compton party, gets into a fight with a rival gang member, with Sergeant Marty Rodriguez.
She pulled out a gun, and when she pulled out a gun, several other people pulled out guns, and it kind of a shooting, a helter-skelter shooting occurred.
And her death would cause eternal issues with the T-Flats. Only 5 days later, on September 10th, 1999, a prominent Fruittown Piru member named Derek Baby Psych Ballard was shot dead, allegedly by Tortilla Flats member Manuel Pelon Gonzalez. But also on that same day, T-Flats would suffer a major loss due to that internal beef stemming from the death of De La Cruz.
Midget's brother, Ricardo Verduzco, known as Woody, had recently broken up with Imelda. They had a 4-year-old son together named Adrian. Upset and disrespected by Imelda's death, shows up about a half hour late for the funeral service. Late, say prosecutors, because he's stopped off to murder someone first. Johnny Rios is a Tortilla Flats gang member known as Big Chucky. He was involved in the shootout at the party where Imelda was killed. And prosecutor Alan Jackson says that will cost him his life.
Johnny Rios is being executed, and there's no question about it. This isn't an accident.
Friends since childhood with Woody and Midget, Johnny doesn't hesitate when Midget asks for a ride to the funeral. But when Johnny pulls up in the driveway of this Linwood house,
they intended for him to die.
Johnny is ambushed. Woody puts 10 9mm slugs into his car, 6 of them fatal. Then Midget walks up and puts 2 .40 caliber slugs into Johnny's head. So close, the shells fall in his lap. The car is still running when cops arrive. Johnny never had a chance.
They were making Johnny pay for Imelda's death.
That killing, the same day that Woody shovels dirt into Imelda's grave. Woody and Midget are eventually arrested, tried, convicted of first-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
The very next day, on September 11 of 1999, T-Flats member Manuel Pelon Gonzalez was parked outside in his gray Chevrolet in front of an auto body shop on 356 West Rosecrans in Compton. Alex Torres was seated in the front seat while listening to the radio. Torres' brother Vincent and Juan Ruiz and Pelon Gonzalez and Wilbur Garcia were all standing outside of the car. The group was waiting for another friend to complete his shift at the auto body shop. Unknowingly, Fruittown Piru member Louis, aka Monster Rue, would approach on foot and shoot Garcia directly in the back. He then fired several shots into the car. Torres exited the vehicle to flee, but collapsed due to gunshot wounds. Louis then crossed the street and jumped into a waiting maroon car and left. Both Garcia and Torres died from their gunshot wounds. Louis, aka Monster Rue, would eventually be arrested and be convicted of 2 counts of second-degree murder. As we enter to the 2000s, the war would rage on. T-Flats would then take on another big loss when well-respected member Oscar, aka Ghost, was shot and killed in February by LAPD. The police stated that an officer who was doing security at the time witnessed T-Flat member Ghost shooting 3 people near a concession stand, and in return, the officer opened fire, killing Ghost on the scene. Nearly 2 years later, T-Flats member named Dennis Gonzalez, aka Little Boxer, had been given direct orders from the MA, aka the Mexican Mafia, to enforce street laws while also setting up shop in Oklahoma. Boxer would also create a hit list for T-Flat members to go out and deal with certain dealers or anyone else who resisted the new laws implemented by the inmate. But also on that list, there was a green light for LAPD officer, Officer Chen, who was responsible for the death of T-Flat member Oscar, aka Ghost, back in February of 2000. Once the detective learned this information from an informant, they quickly intervened. Eventually, Gonzalez will be arrested and convicted for multiple drug trafficking convictions due to his ties to Oklahoma. In the summer of 2005, the back-and-forth shootings was still in full effect. On July 30th, respected Fruittown Piru member known as Taz Bernard was shot to death while in Compton. Authorities believe the Compton Vadio flats were responsible for this murder, simply based on the ongoing beef between the two groups. The very next day, Fruittown Pirus decided to strike back. On the night of July 31st, Fruittown members Kevin Jefferson and Curtis Staten would ride through Tortilla Flats territory inside of a white Chevrolet Suburban, and they would see 24-year-old Anthony Stanforth, who was sitting in a parked Jeep with his fiancée doing 301 West Cedar Street. Stanforth had long hair and a visible arm tattoo that had the initials VH, which stood for Van Halen, his favorite rock group. The Fruittown shooters mistook that tattoo for a VF, possibly interpreted as Vadio Flats. And without a word, they opened fire, and a barrage of bullets from at least 2 guns, including an AK-47, hitting him at least 10 to 15 times and killing him instantly on the scene. His fiancée escaped unharmed. Investigators would later determine that Stanforth had no gang affiliation whatsoever. Both Stanton and Jefferson eventually were arrested and convicted by a jury of first-degree murder and attempted murder for the shooting of Stanforth. Heading into 2010s, the T-Flats beefs will continue on. On April 16 of 2009, 3 teen boys were leaving a friend house. One of the teens was a Treetop Piru member. As they were walking through Orlando Avenue, an area claimed by the T-Flats, instead of going down that block, they decided to go up another block. When the 3 reached the intersection of Elm Street, a black Honda pulled up full of T-Flat members. Known T-Flat member Sosa, aka Hammer, and Eric Naranjo, allegedly the 2 T-Flat members, threw up gang signs and reached for a gun. And as the boys decided to run, one of the teenage boys put out a gun and opened fire, shooting 8 times, hitting T-Flat member Sosa, forcing his vehicle to crash into another van. All 3 teens would eventually be arrested, but only one of the teens would be charged, and he was sentenced to an upper term of 11 years, count 1, plus 10 years for the firearm allegation, for a total of 21 years. On September 10th, 2012, gunfire would erupt when a Fruittown Piru member by the name of Dwayne Dawkins went out looking for T-Flat members. He drove past a courtyard on Magnolia Street near an apartment building where he spotted 4 Hispanic men. He would then proceed to follow them and eventually open fire on the men. One of the men, named Robert Gasca, was hit 5 times and died at the scene. The 3 other men all suffered multiple gunshot wounds. Eventually, Dawkins was arrested and convicted of first-degree murder and premeditated murder. That following year, on December 21st of 2013, T-Flats member Brandon Florence was inside a liquor store and approached a man named Adrian Lamas, who was a Compton Vadio 155 member. Florence would ask Lama where he was from, and Lamas would state that this was his hood. Feeling uncomfortable, Lamas decided to leave the store, but Florence would follow right behind him out the door. As the 2 men were exiting the door, a bounty hunter blood by the name of Ken Sewell would be walking inside the store, and he and Florence would then exchange words. Moments later, T-Flats member Florence would pull out a gun and shoot Sewell at point-blank range in his face. Sewell would die at the scene. Eventually, Florence would be arrested and convicted of first-degree murder. I'd like to thank everybody who took time to watch this video, and I appreciate everybody for tapping in and subscribing. I'll see y'all in the next video.